Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Big Blonde and Beautiful, the podcast. I'm your host, Karolina Howie, and each episode I pick a piece of media with fat representation in it, and I discuss the positives and the negatives of that fat representation. This week, I am so excited to introduce my guest, Hannah Ogilvie-Young. As my guest for this episode, she is the host of Fats on Film, which is a podcast that talks about fat representation in the media. Sounds a little familiar. Just a little.
Just a little.
She's also a plus-size fashion content creator on her personal social medias, and I will have those linked below. And thank you for being here, Hannah.
Oh, thank you so much, Karolina, for inviting me on the pod. I am so excited. You know, we both have very similar passions with our podcasts, and I think anytime we get, fat people together to talk about this, share our joys and our frustrations with fat representation in the media, it's so cathartic. So I'm really excited to again just enjoy some of that time with you today.
Yes. So, quick question, what made you to decide to start your podcast?
It's a really good question. The origins were that I was doing a bit of writing for a film magazine. I've spoken to you before, Carla, that my favorite genre is horror, and so I was writing for a horror magazine at the time, and just a little hobby. And fat representation in horror is fascinating, because it can. With horror, it's such a wide genre for film to explore. So you can have fat representation in terms of male villains, femme villains, but more often than not, they're victims, and they're very rarely the hero. So I wrote an article around that context, and it was received really, really well. And I was like, great. Because I don't know if you feel like this, Carolina, but I was like, am I the only one talking about this? Am I the only one thinking this in depth about this kind of thing? So after that, when that article was received really well, I was like, that's kind of given me my, starting to fire up my arse and going, let's talk about this more and more. So I started the podcast and obviously expanded the genre to include all genres, just because, like we're going to talk about today, looking at every kind of genre, you have those similar tropes that seem to transcend genres, but then you have very specific fat tropes for specific genres, which I think is just always fascinating to talk about and get into, and especially how it then can impact real people is always really fascinating. And sadly, it can be a bit dehumanizing when you really start looking under the hood of some of these tropes, especially if you are someone who unfortunately faces those tropes in real life, or people accusing you of being those tropes and stereotypes in real life. But it's very helpful, knowledge is power, right? It's helpful to start to recognize and see those patterns in media so we can educate ourselves and also educate other people.
Absolutely, because it's just as important for straight sized audiences to see a diverse cast
100%.
and fat people represented correctly, because a lot of people, they get their information about different minority groups from the media. So yes, it can definitely influence how you view people. So it's very important. And I was curious, how did growing up, how did fat representation influence you? Did you notice it? Were you kind of oblivious to it?
Yeah, I've really pondered this question a lot because it obviously comes up in the line of work I do at the moment. But my memory is when I saw fat people on the screen, I didn't want to relate to them because I didn't want to see myself as fat. So I would almost disassociate from it. I would always feel a bit uncomfortable, especially at the jokes of fat people, because obviously I would hear those jokes in the playground at school, right? But I always there are very few media representations where it's good to be fat. So I thought, well, I don't want to relate to any of these punching bags or jokes or villains. Therefore, I don't see myself in these characters, even though I would still be facing the fatphobic rhetoric that those characters then brought to me in real life. So I really just didn't relate to anybody on screen. I wanted to be thinner characters, of course. I wanted to be thin characters, thin Disney princesses. I wanted to be Sabrina the Teenage Witch, but they're all thin, mainly blonde characters, and I'm not naturally blonde. And so it wasn't until I became older and also like more accepting of my body, which took time. You know, it's been a difficult journey for myself to actually accept and come to terms and come to peace with my body. And now I'm having that kind of hindsight's 2020, like looking back and seeing what I missed out on. For example, like, you know, talking to a lot of fat folks, like people love Hairspray growing up because they saw themselves in Tracy Turnblad. But I remember watching that film when I was younger and thinking, how on earth did she get Zac Efron? You know, because I was in that fat phobic rhetoric. And I almost feel sad for myself that I didn't take the positive that film was giving me, because I was so in the fat phobia at the time.
See, I was looking at it like, oh my gosh, I can get Zac Efron.
Yeah,
period.
and that's no, and as you should. That's how you're meant to read that, because who didn't want to be with Zac Efron at that time, you know? But I was just the internalized fat phobia was so real for me, and I just couldn't enjoy it for what it was, or I couldn't take the representation as it should have been. So I'm always a bit like, oh, like it was right there and I didn't take it, you know?
Yeah, I get that. Like, I feel like I kind of was similar. As I got older, I recognized more that I related to those characters. But I think another layer of it for me was the fact that I did community theater and things, and so I didn't want to be typecast in only the roles that could be like fat people or just in the ensemble and things. And so I very much was in denial about being fat, and unfortunately there's a lot of bias in casting even at a local community level. And so it's been interesting at times.
For sure. It's so rough. And again, you know, whenever anything's adapted, people will always go back to the source and be like, but what does the source say? How is that character actually described? And it's like, can we not just move on? Can we not just expand our thinking? Can we not think this is a different interpretation of that character? Why is it so essential? Obviously, with Tracy Turnblad, it's essential that she is plus size. That's part of the story. But for example, why Belle and Beauty and the Beast, why couldn't she be plus size? What would be stopping that characterization, apart from, again, the fat phobic belief that she couldn't be a princess, she couldn't get, you know, Gaston coming after her, or the Beast, or whatever it might be. So it's just that's what's holding us back in terms of expanding, you know, not just body diversity, but any kind of diversity in film, TV, musical theatre. And it's just why are we so fixated on these little boxes where we could just have such a wealth of different experiences and ideas and perspectives? Because we know diversity doesn't just enrich representation, but it literally enriches how we make decisions as societies. This is such a tangent, but a really big thing of the reason why the 2008-2009 recession happened, studies found afterwards, is because of the lack of diversity in boardrooms. So a lot of CEOs and CFOs and CEOs are all older white men, and they all went to the same school, they all had the same education, so they all make the exact same decision and no one challenges it. And they found that's why the entire economy crashed, because they were all making the same bad decision because they had the exact same perspective. But if you brought in diversity, bringing in women, bringing people of different color, different religions, different sexual orientations, then that would have changed the different perspectives being spoken about in the boardroom and could have made different decisions that would have benefited the economy instead of crashing it.
It just goes to show, in all aspects, diversity is never a bad thing. So this week we're going to be talking about the TV show The Office. And you picked The Office. Why did you pick The Office to talk about?
Yeah, no, I picked The Office because it is one of my favorite shows. It is on my comfort show cycle, where I have The Office and Parks and Rec, and I've got Friends on there, Schitt's Creek, which I'll just go to every lunchtime and I'll just watch all the way through and then on to the next show. I've probably watched it all the way through maybe 15 times now, which it sounds like a lot, but I don't know if it actually is a lot compared to other fans of the show.
Compared to me, the amount of times that I've watched Gilmore Girls all the way through, 15
Yeah,
is nothing. It's
there we
nothing.
go. There we go. Yeah, that's absolutely fair. That's absolutely fair. So, and I can't remember when I started watching it, but I came to it a bit later. I think a lot of people did actually, especially in the UK. Obviously there's a constant UK US comparison. The US version is 100 times better than the UK one. I will not hear any different.
I was gonna
It's just more
ask
my
you.
comedy. No,
I was,
the thing is, the UK version, because it's Ricky Gervais, it's really cringe humor, and I cannot stand it. I don't want to be uncomfortable when I'm watching like a comfort show. Whereas in the US one, it did start that way. In season one, it's very cringe orientated, but then it moves into a more like wholesome kind of good humor comedy, which is much more my vibe.
yeah.
So yeah, for me, the US one is a much better watch, and it's also longer, so you got like longer for these story arcs as well. And so when I saw it was on your content list, I was like, oh, it's just such a rich one because it does feature four four larger body characters who are part of the main cast. You see them every episode, and they all, for some better than others, have arcs, which is really, really interesting to see how their character grows and develops over the 9 seasons. I want to say, yeah, I think it is 9 seasons. But there is a lot of bad there as well. There's a lot of questionable jokes and at their expense, or the way they're treated can be really bad. And I think it'd just be a really interesting conversation for us to have because it's such a beloved show, right? And coming back to that idea of like, we need to call it out and educate others. I think if people had never really thought about it before and they just watched the show blindly, they might not be realizing the kind of fat phobic rhetoric they're consuming.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, before we get too much into it, I'm going to give a little synopsis for anyone that has not watched The Office. So, The Office is an American version of a TV show that originated in the UK of the same name. The US version ran from 2005 to 2013, running for a total of 9 seasons. The show focuses on a paper company in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and is shot in a similar documentary style to that of the British original. It features a staff of Dunder Mifflin as they navigate their work environment with characters like their eccentric boss, Michael Scott, the overly serious and competitive Dwight Schrute, and the lovable prankster Jim Halpert, along with more colorful coworkers. So, yes, it's a big cast, focused obviously in an office, the office. Go figure. So, and then 4 fat characters. Hopefully I got the right 4. I was going to ask you, I was like, am I missing one? So I have Stanley Hudson, who's played by Leslie David Baker. Kevin Malone, who's played by Brian Baumgartner. I hope
Baumgartner, yeah.
Baumgartner, yeah. Phyllis Vance, played by Phyllis Smith. Daryl Philbin, played by Craig Robinson.
Those are the 4 I'd have, yeah.
I did look up that one of the episodes was called like weight loss in season 5.
Yes.
Is that one of the ones that you rewatched?
It was. Yeah, the one I watched today, yeah.
Like competitive, incentivizing weight loss. That's also something that happens in like the TV show Shrill. And I don't know if it happens in it does happen in Parks and Rec. Kind of.
Parks and Rec is interesting because the town that they live in is fat, and that's a constant joke throughout the whole show. Even though like they have like 2, maybe you could argue maybe Andy Dwyer is like the 3rd kind of fat character of that show. But in The Office, there is another show that does this because I've definitely seen it relatively recently, but it feels like a relatively common thing. I don't know whether it's a sitcom like trope or whether this is something that happens in American corporate culture.
Like it did happen in some corporate cultures. I feel like it happened mainly when Obama was president because Michelle Obama was a really big advocate of like healthy foods and like making sure that you go out and you play and like all these types of things. So I feel like that really became like a thing in that time period.
Sure. Within the weight loss episode, so that's like the season 5 opener. It's a 2-parter, which is what they did that for every like season opener and season finale. And yeah, like you say, it's like incentivize weight loss, and if whatever branch of Dunder Mifflin loses the most collective weight, they get like 3 extra like annual leave days or paid time off days. So like that is like incentive enough, because my understanding of US holiday is that you don't get a lot of it, which is
Nope.
mad. No,
I don't get any paid time off.
You don't get
in my
any?
job. Nope.
Oh my
Not
god.
So
So what happens if you want to go on holiday?
You just don't get paid.
Right.
You just have to figure out how to go on without that income for that week or however long you're taking it.
To be fair, I work like that now, but I'm like freelance, so that makes sense. But if I was in a permanent job in the UK, I think our minimum, someone's going to correct me, but our minimum holiday is 22 days.
That's so nice.
And that's the lowest in Europe.
Yeah.
Isn't that mad?
It is.
With The Office, that you have this culture where like obviously like holiday or vacation days are gold dust. So they're all working their collective asses off to lose weight. I think it's over like an 8-week period, maybe 8 to 10 weeks. And so like the very beginning, obviously they start and the opposite. They gorge themselves and eat as much food as possible to like heighten their starting weight, like or what should I say, falsely heighten it, to start the weight loss journey. And then Pam, who's at this point she's the receptionist, and she's currently going out with Jim Halpert, and she's about to go off for art college, so she's on the scales, and they realize, oh, but you're not going to be here for 8 weeks, Pam. You need to jump off the scales. And there's this joke where they had the original weight, the Pam comes off, and then they all try and work out how much does that mean Pam weighs. And God. Kevin Malone, who's one of our fat characters, he miscalculates, but he thinks it's 226 pounds. And Pam immediately goes, nope, that not close to 200 pounds. She doesn't correct him and give the actual number, but she makes it clear she's embarrassed to even be accused of being over 200 pounds. I want to point out, this woman is obviously not over 200 pounds. She's one of the slighter women of The Office. But it was interesting, like, she was embarrassed to even be associated with that number. So that's like gag 1. And then from then on, every single joke in this episode, in this 2-parter, is about insane weight loss attempts, which I want to, like, it really tries to have its cake and eat it too. Now, pun is fully intended, because they're taking the mick. They're going, there's jokes between the men, like starving themselves. One hasn't eaten since Friday, and they're only having cases of Diet Coke. You've got Kelly Kapoor, who's played by Mindy Kaling, who she's doing like a juice cleanse, and then she faints, and then she takes a tapeworm pill in a hope to lose weight.
Just leave me alone! I am on the 3rd day of my cleanse diet. All I have to do is drink maple syrup, lemon juice, cayenne pepper, and water for all 3 meals. I just bought some bikinis online, size 2, so I look amazing.
Then there's a whole thing where Michael Scott dresses in a sumo wrestling costume, and he calls himself Michael Clump from the Nutty Professor, and he's trying to explain that if you eat, then if you eat, you'll die, is basically his mantra.
They are beautiful. This big fat pig is beautiful. A lot of you are probably asking yourself, why are you dressed in a plus-size suit?
Because you're kind of doing Michael Clump.
How do you know Michael Clump?
Because it's your making fun of fat people character.
How dare you? Michael Clump is a celebration of fat people. Oh, no, you know what? Fat people are not monsters. Why don't you guys have a little more sensitivity to the subject?
And so, like, this idea that obesity kills. Oh my God, it's so like, as one hand, I'm like, oh, I can understand what they're doing, because we all know, Karolina, I'm sure you know about these insane diets that, you may have even been on, or at least you know people who have been on in the attempt to lose weight. I certainly have done my fair share. So like, yes, this is really good commentary, right? I like it. They're really trying to show how ridiculous this all is. The fact that Kelly Kapoor faints and she's sweating and she looks awful, God love her. That's good. That's exactly, it's so ridiculous. But then I undermines everything when Holly, who's a HR rep at the moment, Holly walks in to explain that they've lost. They've lost to the Nashua branch, but I think they lost by like £8 or something. And they're like, oh, and Michael Scott says something like, oh, that's okay. And then Holly says back, well, at least everyone lost weight, and that's all that really matters. What do you mean?
Yeah. Yeah, because on the one hand, I can get where you're coming from, where like it's showing how ridiculous and harmful these like fad diets can be.
Yes,
but
absolutely.
then on the other hand, it's reinforcing the idea that like you should lose weight no matter what, like no matter the cost to your health or your well-being. Like the goal is to lose weight for everyone. So
that's all that really matters, apparently.
And then the whole, you're overweight, you're gonna die. We're all gonna die.
We're all gonna
die.
Yeah, and I think there's another gag where like Dwight suggests that he's going to pick some names out of his head, and those people have to go get weight loss surgery at their own expense. And he picks the three largest people: Phyllis, Kevin, Stanley, and it's like they're just targets. And that really feeds into The Office as a whole. They are targets, especially Kevin. I think Kevin is the one who gets it the worst out of these characters, and he's got his whole arc of like just being dumbed down and dumbed down and dumbed down as the show goes on. But it's just it's really I'm just a bit frustrated with weight loss because it's such a good idea. Like I've personally worked in a company where they did like a Biggest Loser competition, and it was like voluntary, and obviously everyone had to do it, but it is that culture of, okay, you're at work, well, you got to lose weight while you're here. I've been in the office and been judged for getting like a bottle of Coke and a packet of crisps before because it wasn't a Diet Coke. You know what I mean? Like that culture in the office is absolutely a thing. So it was good for the show to do comment on it, but then like I say, I feel it really undermines its own message, because there's this whole scene where they try and tell Kelly that she's beautiful the way she is and she doesn't need to go this ridiculous weight loss journey, and they like try to do this almost like body positivity moment, but then again they undercut it, because when Kelly thinks the weight loss is done, she's there having her pizza in the break room, and Michael says, is that healthy? And she goes, nope, it's not, because she's really happy she's eating pizza finally. And he's like, come on, like, get your act together, we've got a competition to win. And her face is just like, what? Like, so confused, because it is confusing. Getting those mixed messages all the time, it is confusing.
And I think it brings up like an important discussion about anti-fat bias in the workplace and in the hiring process. Because I know I don't have the statistics like pulled up, but I know that fat people tend to make less than their straight size counterparts.
Yes.
And also just like get hired less than, And as someone who is currently looking for a job, it's very frustrating. I do wonder sometimes if my LinkedIn profile picture has influenced anyone in not hiring me. But I will never know that, so.
No, you'll never know. I worked at a company, which I will not disclose because I'll probably get cancelled immediately. But I worked I was freelance at the time, and I got the job, like, just in a video call. And my LinkedIn picture, like, it doesn't show my face. It doesn't show my body, it just shows my face. And so I don't think he could get a sense of how big I was, which was, works all well for me. And I remember going into the office, and I remember him like just kind of reacting like as if like, oh, you're not that he said anything, but you could just tell by someone's just tone that they're surprised to see you. And that was a weird workplace where everyone was so obsessed with their weight, so obsessed with what they were eating. It was just like, I want to say toxic, but it wasn't like they were toxic in a sense of like toxic to me, but they were toxic to themselves.
Yeah.
And that just kind of radiates out. And I remember thinking like, oh, I wonder if you'd have hired me. If this is how you talk about yourself, if you'd have hired me if you saw me in real life before you gave me the job, you know? Whenever I hear that kind of chat in the office, I always think, have you got nothing better to talk about? Is this it? It's that thing where, especially like women tend to bond over their what am I trying to say? Displeasure of their own bodies, or you know, trying to get rid of those like last 3 pounds, you know, or trying to get my body back after the baby. Like that kind of conversation must be one of the top conversations that women tend to have with each other. And I just go like, is that all we are? You know, is that all we can contribute to society, to our relationships with each other? Are these inane conversations we have about the diet or the weight loss or this new fitness app or whatever it might be? Oh, have you logged that muffin you've just eaten? Like that kind of chat, I truly believe has zero place, end of, but especially zero place in the workplace, because it's like you say, like, do we not have eyes? Do we not have eyes? And we know enough that weight loss is difficult for a large majority of people, whether that's something you're pursuing or not. It is difficult. So why on earth are we talking about something that is so difficult? It's ableist as well. Like, you're just assuming that everyone gonna lose weight. We know that's not true. So why the hell are we talking about it?
Can't fight fascism if you're on a diet.
100%. We need to be fed.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. Getting back to The Office, I know that I feel like the fat character that sticks out the most in my mind from this series is Kevin.
Yes.
So as I said before we started, I'm not really a huge fan of this show.
Sure.
You know how you're talking about like the cringy type of humor in the UK version? I feel like Michael Scott is that all the way through. Like I watched to, I think, season 5, I want to say.
Yeah.
Like I tried. And then and I was like, you know what, Kara? No. It's not worth it.
Choose your piece, you know.
Exactly. I was like, let's just go back and watch, Parks and Rec or Gilmore Girls or something.
Absolutely.
But he's the one that sticks out the most in my mind out of all of them.
Yeah.
And I think a big part of that is like he's the goofy, like dumb fat guy.
Yeah.
Which is a very common trope.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you know from you doing like your podcast and stuff, do you feel like that trope is specifically in comedies and like sitcoms and things, or do you think it is like universal in all genres?
That's a really good question. So I think the kind of dumb, goofy fat guy is, in my experience, is very comedy focused. Because I always like Kevin Malone is the real life Homer Simpson. He is food obsessed to like an insane proportion, and his whole arc is him getting dumber and dumber, and they call that the Flanderization of characters, like when they just make them into this kind of like catchphrase almost, because they just give him no other personality. And so I think with the dumb fat character, like another like example, which it does cross over into horror, but it's a horror comedy, is Tucker and Dale versus Evil. It's a really, really good film, but the kind of like the brother in that duo, he is the dumb fat guy character. It's with like Kevin or maybe even like Homer Simpson. Like I don't know whether you're meant to find them lovable, because I think there are people who do love Homer Simpson. I don't think there are many people who love Kevin Malone, but they are there to laugh at, not laugh with. And that's a really important distinction. And poor Kevin, like, they actually really started off strong with his character in the earlier seasons. So he talks normally, which is like a really big character difference compared to like season 9, where he has this very slow, almost like lethargic cadence to the way he speaks. It's very deep, it's very low. But like in the earlier seasons, he speaks normally, slower, sure, a bit more labored, but normally. He's very smart. He's a poker player, so he can bluff, and he can obviously, like, playing poker, you have to be smart. So he has these kind of skill sets. He obviously works in accounting, and he didn't just get that job from nowhere, but of course they then rewrite history, and they make out like like Michael Scott was doing him a favor by keeping him in the accounting department, because he doesn't do anything there. He's apparently just a wasted resource. He created a number called the Kevin when he didn't know the
I keep seeing this symbol in the accounts from last year. It's all over the place. I don't know what it means.
That's the reason Kevin got fired. It's his magic number. He used to use it to balance his accounts. He used to call it a Kevin. He told Dwight, a mistake plus Kevin gets you home by 7. He was home by 4:45 that day.
Right number to put in, and he just made up this kind of like 8, 7, 11 kind of number. And he ends up getting fired at the end of the show, and he opens his own pub. But his character arc is just one who gets more stupid. There's a whole a cold open where he starts to talk without having, like, what does he say? There's a whole thing which is like, why say more word when less words save time?
I've seen that a
Yeah.
lot. Yes.
Yeah.
Me mechanic not speak English, but he know what me mean when me say car no go, and we best friends. So me think, why waste time say lot word when few word do trick?
So there's that whole arc of his. There's the infamous chili scene where, again, it's a cold open where he makes a chili every year for his co-workers, which, before the joke happens, is a very lovely thing to do. That's community. We love that.
Yeah.
But then, of course, he falls, he stumbles, because he's not just fat, he's clumsy fat.
Yep.
And he drops the chili everywhere. He tries to scoop it back into the pot. And that, I mean, I love that scene because it is funny, and you do feel really sorry for Kevin in that moment, because he's really tried hard, bless him.
Yeah.
And also, we all fall, okay? That's not a fat specific thing, because I'm clumsy as hell, so I resent that
Me
trope.
too. Me too. I do too. I think about it all the time. I'm like, dang, I really wish that, like, I defied that trope, but I really am just
I fall
so
head
clumsy.
first into it, truly. It's just like it just becomes, sadly, like trope after trope after trope of him being really stupid, but of course food obsessed. So that he has a whole rant about mini cupcakes.
We're out there sweating our balls off every day, busting our balls. We deserve a Christmas party.
Well, then why don't we just get some liquor and those mini cupcakes?
Mini cupcakes? As in the mini version of regular cupcakes, which is already a mini version of cake? Honestly, where does it end with you people?
He has rants about which pizza that they should be ordering pizza from. He can't eat a broccoli correctly, which really reminds me of that. They used to say all the time that American school kids don't recognize vegetables. It was very that joke. Like, it's just Kevin is so sad when I think about it, because they were doing something really cool with him, and then they just went straight into, oh, you're fat and you're stupid and you're food obsessed. You can't, he loses his fiance, I think season 2, and then he's like, doesn't have a relationship for a while, and then he does, and then that just disappears. So like, he doesn't have like much love interest either, which is a shame.
It sounds like they really just were like, what are all the stereotypes of a fat person, and let's make this character just embody all of it.
Literally. So there's this theory that actually he was, well, we kind of know he is embezzling from Dunder Mifflin, but they argue, but he's playing dumb because he obviously doesn't want to get caught. And then, like, he has a pub at the end of the show because he gets fired by Dwight, who ends up becoming manager. And they go, well, how could he have afforded a pub? He must have used his money from embezzling. So that's the current theory for Kevin, even though it's a throwaway line at like season 3.
Mhm.
And so there's another 6 seasons after that. So maybe, I don't think that's been confirmed by the creators or the writers, but that's what the fans like to believe.
One of my favorite characters, also, from what I can recall, again, I watched it like one time, and it was a while ago.
Yeah.
Is Stanley.
Love Stanley.
I feel like I relate to Stanley so much because what I remember from him is he's there to do his job, get his money, and go home.
100%.
He doesn't want any other BS.
No.
And I feel that so strongly.
As soon as it hits 5 o'clock, he's out that door. He's not being paid a dime extra, so why is he staying?
He said, I'm quiet quitting in the year 2005.
Literally, like, his whole thing is about just getting to retirement. Like, in that, you could challenge he's fitting into that kind of lazy fat stereotype, and there's definitely Stanley does fall into that, because there's an episode, I think, in season 9 called Stairmageddon, which is when, so Dwight is the landlord of the office building, and he's having to do works on the lift or the elevator. And so Stanley is furious because it means he has to walk up the stairs. So he finally gets the stairs, he's out of breath, he's, like, furious at Dwight for, like, not having the lift done on the weekend type thing. And then but then Stanley's like, Dwight's like, oh, you should have just called me when you were downstairs, because we've got to go on a job right now. He's like, you climbed up those stairs for nothing. Stanley's furious. He's like, I'm not going anywhere. And Dwight tranquilizes Stanley to push him down the stairs.
One way or another, you are going to come with me to make this sale.
Pass.
Don't worry, it's just a bull tranquilizer. Nothing to be alarmed about. It's just a man pointing a bull tranquilizer at a coworker.
Dwight, you do not learn, do you? For a threat to be credible, you have...
Holy
No, you didn't. I'm sick of you and your...
Get him to the client before he comes to. Grab his feet. Let's go.
All right.
Move it. 1, 2, 3. It's like a manatee. Ready? Let's go again. Come on. We can do this. 1, 2, 3. Oh, God. No wonder my elevator cables are under such strain.
It's a whole thing. This is when we, like, really... The show's jumped the shark by this point. I want to make it very clear. I wonder when people think the show jumped the shark. I don't know, but, like, at this point, like, we're at the ridiculous end of this show. Like, we are doing really off-the-wall ideas. So yeah, because he's so lazy, he refuses to go back down the stairs. So they trank him. They do the sales gig. They come back, and they're like, oh, the lift's still out. We've got to walk up the stairs. And Stanley goes, absolutely not. You brought me down the stairs. You're taking me back up them. And he tranks himself. And falls asleep, and they're like, well, what do we do? Like, we have to build a harness to get Stanley back up the stairs, basically. And so you have that with Stanley. But what I would say, that's a really bad example. He isn't often shown like that. He's, like you say, I love the quiet quitting. He's more seen as a quiet quitter. Yeah. I wouldn't say he's that food obsessed, but his favorite day of the year is pretzel day.
I wake up every morning in a bed that's too small, drive my daughter to a school that's too expensive, and then I go to work to a job for which I get paid too little. But on pretzel day, well, I like pretzel day.
I do remember pretzel day.
Yes, he's diabetic, which is a trope that comes in like time and time again. Like, there's a whole scene where Michael Scott says, you've got diabetes, and Stanley says, just because of my size doesn't prove I have diabetes. And he then gets up with a bit of a harumph, and then Michael Scott says, I can tell by that sound you've just made that you're diabetic. So you have that. There's another episode in season 8, I want to say 8 or 9, again, the listeners will correct me, called Work Bus, where they all have to go on a bus. Again, we've jumped the shark, remember? We're all on a bus and we're working. They've all got desks and stuff, and they realise that the bus could move, so they could go wherever they want. And Jim Halpert says, why don't we go to the pie stand, which is like, X amount of miles down the road. And Phyllis, Stanley, and Kevin are like, pies, pies, pies. And Andy Bernard, who's the manager at this time, goes, "The fat people have spoken. We will have pies." And then they go to get the pies.
That's so Andy to do that.
I
remember that, man.
Sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear.
No, you can. Go for it. Especially in this circumstance right now.
I fucking hate Andy Bernard. He is a terrible character, and again, I know the fans will agree with me. They really ruin his character. He's okay in the earlier seasons. Obviously, he has the whole anger problem, and then he gets over it, and he's okay in that middle part. But when he make him manager, they completely change his character. And in the last season, in season 9, he is actively awful, like a really bad person.
Also, isn't Stanley's diabetes mentioned in the CPR episode?
Oh my god. Okay, that's what it's like the best episode. Yeah, so there's like a fake fire drill. He has a heart attack. Obviously
that's what it was, a heart attack.
He has a heart attack, but then they bring in a CPR teacher because like what kind of it's called health and safety, this episode. And so like, what happens if something happens again? The team of Dunder Mifflin need to learn how to do CPR, and so it's his heart rate that's a problem. I don't know if his diabetes comes up in that episode, but definitely obviously his heart does.
Yeah.
Which is a whole thing. God, I do love Stanley because I just feel so sorry for him in that episode. He just wants peace,
I know.
Just give him some peace. But then another interesting part of Stanley is he is a serial cheater. He has 3 affairs throughout the show's runtime.
Dang, I did not remember that.
No, well, it's funny because as an audience, we know he's had 2. So he's obviously has his wife. He then has his mistress. I think her name's Cynthia, and then he also has an affair with his nurse he has after his heart attack. But then, when they realise that the documentary crew's been filming them, not just at work, but in their private lives as well, he says, I can't have my wife find out about my affairs. And Phyllis says something like, "Oh, but I thought she knew about Terry and blah, blah, blah." He's like, "Yeah, they know about each other, but they don't know anything about this mystery woman we've never heard of before." So he has at least 3 affairs. So that's an interesting characterization, because another kind of fat trope we see a lot is like the sex-obsessed fat person. Now you could argue, is Stanley falling into that trope? Because we never actually see it, we just know it's happening.
Yeah.
Or actually, is it an interesting kind of subversion? We wouldn't maybe necessarily expect that this larger man could get that many women, especially like compared to like Kevin's characterization, which is he's very unlucky in love,
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I would associate it with more, is it's kind of like subverting expectations. Because, see, what media are you thinking of with the hypersexualized fat character? Because to me, when it comes to like sexuality and stuff, I think of like, oh, I'm fat, so I'm like unlovable and I can never find someone.
Yeah, so it's interesting because I my head's instantly gone to horror. So like we see
that's
a lot.
Probably why I don't think of it.
Yeah, no, that's completely fair. So maybe in comedy it's not as obvious. A trope again. I'm kind of going through my Rolodex of ideas, but definitely in horror we get that with like fat villainry, where fat villains can be sex obsessed, perverted, like so. I could have thrown out some like one of the Saw films, Saw 4, I think, has a sex obsessed, like perverted, gross. He's a victim / villain in that context. And then in the Human Centipede Part 2, the main villain of that is very like sex obsessed, perverted, and disgusting. So, and they are sizable men. It's interesting because I think in both of those examples they are topless as well, so you really see the size of them, which it's a choice.
I mean, hey, we have guys with 6-packs have their shirts off all the time.
Why not?
Yeah, that is interesting. Yeah, I've never seen either of those movies.
For you, probably Carolina, I wouldn't recommend. Not for you.
No. No, I wouldn't recommend for me either. Honestly, I branched out last week and watched Split. because I love James McAvoy.
Of course, you're a woman. Why wouldn't you love him?
I have eyes, you know. But so I didn't mind that one too much. It didn't like scare me or anything.
Yeah. No, and he's very good in that.
Back to The Office, completely went off. Anyway, it's important to talk about him.
No, I'm never mad at that.
He's very good. But so Phyllis, what tropes does she fall into, would you say?
Yeah, so Phyllis, I think, is probably... There's some things I love about Phyllis's character. I think maybe a negative part of Phyllis's character is that she's seen as like the mum of the group, even though she's the same age as Michael Scott. And that gets brought up all the time. Yeah. So they dress her. I think her dress is very interesting because it's just a lot of like maxi pleated skirts and kind of plain t-shirts.
Like matronly, she does dress kind of like that.
Absolutely. And like there's a whole thing where like she has to keep reminding Michael that they went to school together. They're in the same year. And yet apparently like they're clearly not played like they are.
Yeah, I would not have remembered or guessed that they were the same age.
Absolutely.
She does. She's just so much older. The main thing that I remember about Phyllis is that one thing when they have like a bet or something going in the office where they're like, Jim will get everyone hot chocolate if she says all the cliches about the rain. And she was just like, normally I'd say I just wanted to stay home with a good book, but everyone was so nice to me today.
Phyllis says the same 12 cliches every time it rains. So I promised everyone that if she says them all by noon today, I will send out for hot chocolates.
So how's the drive in?
Nobody knows how to drive in the rain.
You don't say.
Yeah. The roads are actually the slickest in the first half hour. Whew. The plants are gonna love this.
Yeah.
I actually sleep better when it's raining.
Tell me about it.
Time's almost up. How many are left?
Just one. This weather makes me want to stay at home curled up with a good book.
Phyllis, this rain, does it make you want to be doing something?
What do you mean?
Aren't some things just so nice and cozy in the rain?
Hey, come on.
Lots of things are cozy in the rain.
And that's noon. Exactly.
I mean, normally the rain would make me want to stay at home curled up with a good book, but everybody's being so nice to me today. I'm really happy being here.
Absolutely.
And I was like, that's so sweet.
No. She is so sweet. She does start the show being very submissive, I would say. She doesn't really speak out much. She definitely has a line, but she's very soft about it. But as the show goes on, she definitely steps more into her like authoritarian part of her. And for example, like her and Angela have this real big kind of like feud, but then they also become friends and they feud again because they're both part of the party planning committee, the PPC.
Yep.
And which is obviously very important. And so like Phyllis really finds her voice in that because she knows that Angela and Dwight are having an affair when Angela's engaged to Andy. So but Phyllis uses it to her advantage. Like she blackmails Angela. But the thing is, that sounds negative, but Angela really deserves it. So as the audience, you're on Phyllis's side. You're like, yeah, you know what? Because Angela's a bitch. Like she's not meant to be a liked person in the office. So you are on Phyllis's side. And then, Angela tries to call her bluff and be like, you're never going to tell anyone because you're benefiting from this too much. And Phyllis tells everyone right then and there.
Face it, the only power you have over me is this little secret that I know you're not going to tell. Oh, and you want to know how I know that? Because then you won't be able to plan your stupid, tacky parties anymore. So you move the tree.
Okay. Angela's having sex with Dwight.
They are sleeping together. And I was like, it's such a great moment for Phyllis because it just shows she's not going to be walked all over again. So that's a real growth of her character. What my favorite thing about Phyllis though is her romance arc. I think something we see rarely in TV, but I think The Office is very good in, and I think Parks and Rec is very good for, is older love, is people in middle age and older finding their soulmates. So Phyllis finds Bob Vance Refrigeration, in her husband, and he's got the office next door to Dunder Mifflin, and I think that's how they meet. And so we have a wedding episode for Bob and Phyllis, which is great. It turns out, though, she's stolen all of the same details that Pam was going to have with Roy's wedding. So Pam's a bit pissed at that. But apparently, Pam and Phyllis have got the same wedding dress, which, again, I was like, is that possible? But it's just a gag. They're hoping no one's going to think about that too deeply.
Yeah.
But, like, yeah, she has this love of her life, and he's obsessed with Phyllis. He loves Phyllis. Absolutely loves her. We hear later of how she got Bob to notice her. And what she would do is she would break into the Bob Vance Refrigeration offices and just be sitting on his desk with nothing but cat ears on. And then one morning, he comes in with nothing on but dog ears, and that's when they knew they were made for each other.
That's hilarious.
But she's confident. There's a whole thing where she's got like a talking head. I can't remember what the context is, but she says really like sullenly, like, "Oh, I wonder what people talk about me behind my back." And then she looks at the camera and goes, "Probably my jugs." Like, she is confident, and she's confident in herself.
Yes.
And I think that's awesome. It's just so lovely to see.
I think
she
it's
has a
great
whole
that she
thing. Sorry, go
found
on.
someone that was going to match her freak.
Absolutely. There's an episode where the Valentine's Day episode where Jim and Pam go to dinner with Bob and Phyllis, and then they go off to the bathroom, and then the dinner comes like, oh wait, how long do we have to wait until they come back? They've been ages. And they go and find them, and they're in the disabled toilets having sex. Like, they are on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And these are people who are meant to be like in their 50s. It's fun. It's really fun. You're like, yay! Just love the love. There's a Christmas episode where she asked, who did she ask? Oh, I think she asked Jim when Jim was co-manager to be Santa, because she's always wanted to be Santa. And she and Michael's really upset about it because he's like, a Santa should be a man. But like, everyone just wants Phyllis to be Santa. She's absolutely having the bestest time. She's loving it. And
Love
then
that.
Bob Vance comes in because he's heard that Michael's being a dick, basically. And the Phyllis is like, no, Bob, sorry, we've resolved it. And Michael goes to Phyllis, oh, Phyllis, you called Bob? He's scared of Bob. But then Bob is also dressed as Santa, so Phyllis and Bob are making out as Santa.
That's
dumb.
funny.
It's so silly. But I think the Phyllis love arc is brilliant. I think it deserves more recognition for how great it is, and just great representation all around. But go back to Phyllis's like matronly side, she knits as well. That's a whole thing. But she's a relatively good saleswoman. I think that's one of her strengths. There's an episode where Karen Filippelli, who is Rashida Jones's character, she comes from the other branch because two branches get combined, and Phyllis says, "Oh, let me take you to the salon and give you a makeover." It's this ridiculous like 80s style blowout and eyeshadow, and you can tell like I just completely forgot her name. I just said it. What's Rashida Jones's character? Karen. Karen's like, oh, this isn't for me. Like, you're obviously out of touch. You don't know what you're doing. You're obviously old. You can see that's the rhetoric going on. But when they get to the sales call, clearly the guy they're trying to sell to loves that look in a woman because he's got pictures of it. So like, Phyllis is savvy, and I think Karen learns to trust Phyllis's instincts, and she's not doing it for whatever reason. She's got a plan. When it comes to Phyllis's size, I don't think anything's ever mentioned directly just to Phyllis. But she's always spoken about as one of the fatter characters of The Office. So whenever there's a food joke, it'll be directed at Phyllis as well. There's an episode where they do a blood drive, and Stanley and Phyllis both fake that they've had their blood taken so they can try to get a cookie from the blood drive to put up their blood sugar. She's a bit of a lush. She likes a drink. That's kind of brought up a couple of times. There is one episode where Michael wants to be set up on a blind date by anyone from the office's suggestions. And Phyllis suggests her friend, and I can't remember what her friend's called. And Michael goes, how would you describe whatever the friend's called?
Oh, God.
And Phyllis said, she's really bubbly. And Michael said, bubbly, could a rowboat sustain her? And Phyllis goes, I don't know what you mean. And Michael says, you can a rowboat hold her up? And Phyllis goes, no, of course, okay, I get it, no. And basically determining that this woman is a fat woman. Without having to get Phyllis to say, oh yeah, it's a fat friend. But then I think actually Phyllis does say that, like, I am going to suggest my fat friend to Michael because he doesn't deserve anything better. So, I'm not saying Phyllis is 100% great.
Yeah, I was going to say mixed emotions on that.
Yeah.
Right there.
But there are good parts of Phyllis.
And then the fourth one, which I really don't remember much about Craig, other than that he works in, like, the warehouse part.
Yeah.
Does he have a big storyline or no?
He does. Later on, though.
That's
so,
why I don't
Daryl
remember.
Philbin is in the show from day dot, but he is a background character. Craig Robinson is a background character. He's in the warehouse manager. Now, what season is it? I think as the season go on, he gets more and more screen time. And at one point, it might be season 5 or 6, when he's a lot more in the show. And he's literally every episode he's in it. And then when Kathy Bates is CEO of Dunder Mifflin Sabre, she suggests that Daryl move up to the upstairs office. So he's very much in amongst with the main cast at that point. So Daryl's really interesting because his whole character arc is ambition. So obviously, like, he's warehouse manager. He never takes Michael Scott's shit, which is a really big thing. And Michael is scared of Daryl. There is definitely a bit of racism at play as well.
Yeah.
But to Daryl's credit, he uses it to his advantage, which means that Michael doesn't spend much time in the warehouse, and Daryl can run it how he needs to. And he always says to Michael, don't come in my business, like, you're not the boss down here, you haven't had the health and safety training. And basically always has to keep Michael on a really tight leash, basically. But then as it goes on, Daryl obviously gets a bit more airtime. There's an episode where he plays ping pong with Jim, for example, and there's a whole thing there. But it's only when he gets kind of more into the actual upstairs office we see more of his character. And he is someone who has obviously watched Dunder Mifflin for a very long time, but he has ideas, and Michael has been not listening to those ideas. And that becomes a real point of friction between Michael and Daryl, because Daryl knows he has ambition and smarts. There's a whole thing where he wants to go to night school when Will Ferrell is briefly manager. So he's going to go to night school, but then he doesn't follow through and he gets lazy. He just kind of rests on his laurels a little bit, and he gets really upset when he doesn't get the manager position when Michael Scott leaves. And he almost blames Andy for not getting that job. Then when Jim goes and starts his sports agency in Philly, Jim says, oh, you can come with me, but then it takes a long time to actually get Daryl to come with him. But then eventually Daryl does move on to that job, and then he becomes very successful in that. But part of Daryl's personality is he is a father, but he doesn't have full custody of his child, and there's a contentious relationship he has with the mother of the child. He has a relationship throughout the season. He's a couple. He is in a relationship with Kelly Kapoor at one point, but he doesn't seem to really like her that much. So when Kelly dumps him for Ryan again, he really is fine with it.
Okay.
Yeah. He hires Val to replace him as the warehouse manager. And he then develops a relationship with Val. But again, when he doesn't want to be in a relationship anymore, so he just starts pulling back and then she dumps him. So he's always seen as like, a bachelor of some kind. He does have one episode where he wants to lose weight. And that is when Dwight opens up a gym in the building, but it's like a really shit gym, which makes no sense. So that he has this kind of weight loss thing, and Dwight has to encourage him through tough love to lose the weight. And going on that, I feel like obviously there is an episode which talks about at the very beginning called Weight Loss, where everyone is actively losing weight. But I think with Daryl, like, I would also say he's probably the smallest fat of the four of them. He's someone who has authority. He's someone who has respect. He's someone who has ambition. But he also has flaws. He's not seen as the kind of like food obsessed fat people like Phyllis, Stanley, and Kevin. And he has a really interesting arc around ambition. But of course, then he also has this whole thing where he does want to lose weight at some point as well. So, you take the rough with the smooth.
So, are there any like other episodes or themes that you feel like we haven't touched on that we should talk about?
Yeah, there's a really horrendous treatment of a fat character. So it's in season 3, and it's when the two branches, Stanford and Scranton branches, combine. So Scranton absorbs the Stanford branch. And I think like 5 or 6 colleagues are moving over. Basically, this episode is like all of these characters dropping like flies because they can't stand Michael Scott. That's the theme of this episode. And one of these characters is a guy called Tony. He's probably the largest character that we see in the show. And he's uncomfortable with Michael because he's so weird as Michael. Of course, Andy comes from Stanford as well. I always forget Andy comes from Stanford. So Andy's obviously one of the characters, the only character who stays for the rest of the show.
Honestly, him and Michael are like twins separated at birth.
Well, this is the whole point of this episode. So Andy mirrors Michael to make Michael trust him, basically. And they're just really awkward together. So he gives every person who comes from Stanford, he gives them a little gift bag of like restaurants in Scranton and gift book and vouchers, and it's actually very sweet. It's a very nice idea to do for people who have relocated. So that Tony comes and he's very quiet, he's very reserved, and there's this whole lunch that Michael puts on where he wants to put the Stanford colleagues on top of a table to say, and this is obviously the joke, to say that we're all equal here. We're not above you just because we're from Scranton, Stanford people. And so they say to Tony, why don't you get up on that table and sit with your colleagues? And Tony's like, I'd be much more comfortable staying on the ground, thank you. And Michael and Dwight they are literally pushing Tony up on this table. Come on, Tony, come on, we could do it. And Tony's like, no, I'm done. And he says, I was hesitant about the move anyway, but you've kind of confirmed it. Like, I don't want to stay here. And then I think Michael says, oh, was it Dwight? Has he been too much? And Tony's like, no, it's you. You are the problem. And he stands up for us like, no, you're the problem. And Michael is so offended that Tony would accuse him of being the problem. He fires Tony. Tony was about to walk. So then Michael gets in trouble because he's like, now they have to pay him severance and all that kind of stuff. But then when it comes back, I don't know if it's in the same episode or maybe like a couple of episodes later, Pam says to Michael, like, basically all the Stanford colleagues have now quit. There's a character called Hannah, like Hannah, Tony, and Michael goes, who is Tony? And Dwight kind of like shows it like, oh, like the bigger one, he just like uses his arms like this, like to like say bigger. And Michael goes, oh yeah, big fat Tony, like that. And whenever I watch the episode again, like when I do my rewatch, I am shocked every time it is as cruel as it is.
Yeah.
It's so sad. It's so sad.
Yeah, that cruelty doesn't sound humorous at
It's
all to
not.
me.
It's really cringe. So in accounting, you have Kevin, which we've spoken about at length, but
Mhm.
his, co-worker is Angela. And her
Yeah.
whole joke is that she's a petite, tiny woman who eats
Yeah.
like a squirrel and weighs nothing. That's her
Mhm.
whole character. So you have that real juxtaposition. And obviously, like I know when people bring up, fat shaming, you'll have a group of people who bring up skinny shaming. And I can understand that that's what they would say with the whole Angela thing, but
Yeah.
they're not the same thing.
No. It would be like saying like reverse racism.
Yeah.
Or something like that, because like the system is set up against, black people or fat people. It's not set up against thinner white people.
No.
You can have prejudice towards those people, but like, no, it's, I get what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah, it's that we're talking about two different things here. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And then there was one thing. Oh yeah, there's one more thing. So when so Jenna Fisher was genuinely pregnant in season 8, I want to say.
Mhm.
And Angela's character is pregnant at the same time because you have the two of them being pregnant.
Yeah.
So Jenna isn't, or the actress Jenna Fisher isn't wearing like a pregnancy belly. She is
Mhm.
truly pregnant. And Angela's character is wearing a pregnancy belly. And yet there's this whole joke that Jenna is big pregs and Angela is little pregs because, Jenna's bump is bumping,
Yeah.
And there's a whole thing about, Jenna, Pam losing a bit of self-confidence because she's so pregnant and she's worried that
Mhm.
her replacement has got eyes for Jim or Jim's got eyes for the replacement. So she's going through this whole body image confidence crisis thing,
Mhm.
which I find, I'd love to know truly how Jenna must have felt about those jokes being made. Because she's
Yeah.
truly, actually pregnant. Like, that is her
Yeah.
body at that point. But then when you go into season 9, and obviously she's had baby, and Jenna Fisher body is where she wants it to be. And in episode 1, she Pam has a line where she mentions that she is like 110 pounds. And I think it's a real juxtaposition between the whole of season 8 being about how she's a big pregnant woman to now she's 110 pounds.
Mhm. That
We're so focused on weight.
I
We're
also
obsessed
think
with it.
like when your weight and size is so much of your character.
Yeah.
Like, and then you play this character for 9 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like not for everyone, but I feel like for most people it would be really hard to maintain a similar weight that you had from the first season to the last.
100%. And I think a lot of people say, I'm going to say something and I can't think of any examples, but I know there have been actors and actresses who have said, people come up to them being like, oh, you've gained weight since show from 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, because I'm 20 years older, And it's that that thing you see all the time on social media is being like, yeah, I'm not the same size as I was when I was 16 because I'm 35 now. I shouldn't be the same size I was when I was 16. That's bizarre.
Yeah, absolutely. Our bodies aren't stagnant things.
Nope.
Like they go up and down. Like that's just life.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, Hollywood tries to make us believe that isn't true. But that's because a lot of these actors are like working out multiple times a day. They have trainers, they have strict diet plans, like
it's their job.
All these things. Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And even for it being their job, sometimes I think it goes too far.
Oh no, 100%. But like they can literally dedicate their lives to it. Where, people like me and you, we have jobs, we may have multiple jobs. It would be impossible for us to maintain the regimens that they are also that these celebrities are doing. And also hella expensive for us. Whereas we know with these, with the celebrities, the studios often pay for it. Like look at all the Marvel actors, they all get all that shit paid for. They don't even have to pay for it. So how are we, you know, normal people, quote unquote, meant to do it too? Like, it's impossible.
Overall, would you say that this piece of media is more negative or positive about representation?
I think on the surface, it's negative. Yeah, I think it is negative. There's a lot of jokes at the expense of fat people. However, because I've watched it a lot, and because this is my specialist subject, I can see the positive, but I'm mining for it, Karolina. Like, I'm really digging deep for it, because
You're like, where's it at?
Yeah, where is it going? Come on, because I want it to be better. But if you were a layman who's come to this show and you don't have any interest in looking for that positive fat representation, you're not going to see it. You're really not going to see it. Which is a real shame, and I can't. And the thing is, I have defended it a little bit on the show. But if someone came to me and went, "No, I think it's like, you know, horrendously bad for fat people," I would have to agree with them as well. Be like, it is. There's a lot of bad there.
Yeah, I would also have to say negative fat representation, but I will say that hearing you talk about it, put it in a little bit more of a positive light for me. Like, I was like, oh, okay, I could see how that could be, you know, like, not bad or whatever. So yeah, I will say you did make me maybe think it's a little bit less fatphobic.
I'll take that.
A win's a win.
Yeah, we've got to take what we can, babe. Like, come on, we've not got much.
But I will say, yeah, overall negative, just because, at surface level, if you're not really looking for it and rewatching it, which I feel like a lot of people rewatch it. Like,
they
it's a
do.
big rewatch show.
Yeah, they 100%, and I'm 100% one of them. It's 20 years old this year, right? It started in 2005, and people are still watching it. New audiences are still finding it. Younger generations are now watching it. And it would be really interesting to hear, like in the same way that Friends got reassessed a few years ago, I'm sure The Office will be due a reassessment. And I think a lot of it will come out to be like misogynistic, racist, and fatphobic.
Oh yeah, I feel like as we hopefully evolve as people and come to, I hope, care more about different types of people and their experiences and things like that, that, you know, they may even look at this 20 years from now, this podcast, and be like, here's the thing. And so, and you know what? That's 100%. Okay. We're always learning.
We're learning, we're growing. This is an opinion at a point of time. And we will grow. Our opinions will grow and change, and there's nothing wrong with that. That is what being a human is all about. Some would argue we're going backwards. Some may argue, man. But like, regardless, there are still so many layers to go until we're fully integrated. And that's why, like, I truly believe like our podcasts are so important, because it's calling that out.
I feel like the era of Ozempic has really taken things backwards. I feel like that's a big factor in representation right now. Or lack of.
Because I think the people who wear plus size don't exist anymore. Like, I think that's a real big issue. If some of these people have made a platform on being quote unquote body positive, and they're now walking that back, you're gonna get criticized to all hell. You know, in the same way that I would expect to be criticized if I'd done that on my platform. Like, imagine if I created my podcast called Fats on Film on my little social media of like plus size fashion, and then I dropped like half my weight, and then I went, oh, I'm no longer talking about fat people in film. That would be really fucking shady of me, and I would deserve to be criticized for that.
Yeah, or even another level of it where you're like, actually, now I'm gonna scrutinize fat people.
Babe,
that's the worst.
I know, and I've been really thinking about that, like the former fat phobia thing that we know, and I'm like, you know, losing weight's difficult because you've just gone through it. In what world do you think you're exempt from gaining weight again?
Exactly.
Because you'll be
and
coming
then you're
back.
going to expect that community that you just scrutinized to be there for you again.
100%, to build you back up again. 100%. 100%. And that pisses me off, you know? Like, I'm not going to, I've been very honest about this, but I have been so tempted by Ozempic. Like, so tempted. Because it's everywhere I look, and it's being touted as the answer to all my problems.
Yep.
And I'm a happy person, Karolina. So I'm like, how much happier can one get, you know? I'm willing to like have a look. But then I have to then really assess, okay, why is that? Why am I so tempted? I'm like, what would it mean?
But I will say that it does kind of clear up the way society treats you.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
And that's the real like motivator. I feel like for a lot of people to get on it is because they're like, I can have access to more fashion. I can be comfortable sitting, in a theater. People won't like criticize me for my body as much anymore. So
I totally get it. And that's what I mean. Like, if you want to make that decision, I fucking get it. Crack on, you have my blessing. Because it's a systemic issue. This is not something that one individual can resolve. And if one individual wants to make their life a little bit easier by complying, I kind of get it. Like, I kind of get it.
Just don't shit on all the other plus size people who aren't following suit.
And that's it. Like, at the moment, for me, my priority is my mental health. And I think if I start fucking with my body, it's not gonna end well, I don't think, for me. So I'm happy where I am. I'm content where I am. But I'm also like, I live in the world. I see it every day. So I'm just like, what the heck? What's going on? I'm gonna have a look. And then I'm like, nope, don't do that.
Don't do it. Don't open Pandora's box.
No, that's it. It's like curiosity is going to kill this cat. Like, truly.
You want to let the people know where they can find you?
Yeah. Oh my god. Yes. So you can find my podcast, Fats on Film, wherever you listen to your podcast. We have an Instagram at Fats on Film, but we have loads of episodes. We've got one with Karolina coming up very shortly. We've spoken about musicals, like Hairspray in Chicago. We've spoken about horror films. As I mentioned earlier, I love horror films. There's a really great Spanish horror film called Piggy. If you love horror, we've spoken about dramas. We spoke about Titanic. We spoke about children's films like Matilda. There's a lot to look through. I think we're almost coming up to 50 episodes now. So take your pick, and we've got more coming up. We've got fantastic guests. And then me personally, I do like plus size fashion, and I talk about just kind of all things being fat. And I do that over at Queen Bee Says, and that's on Instagram and TikTok.
So definitely go check that out, especially if you're more of a horror person, because I'm not the one to talk about it. Or, if you just want to hear a different perspective on a film that, I've already discussed, or
100%.
Films that I haven't.
That's it. We're not a monolith. We have different opinions.
Yes. And I did like one horror film, and I think that might be the limit.
That might be it.
But so definitely go check that out, and I will have it linked below, all of the socials. And as always, you can follow our podcast on TikTok at bbb.thepodcast, Instagram at bbb.podcast, and you can listen wherever. Rate us 5 stars, leave a comment, love to hear your thoughts. You can follow me on all social media at Karolina Howie. And until next time, stay fat and fabulous. Bye.